What's up everybody, it's Sanchi. Today I'm going to be breaking down this Cubeatz type guitar melody, and I'm going to show you each individual instrument and how I made it. We're going to go through the music theory behind it. We're going to go through some of the key aspects of making a melody like this, and I'm going to be showing you how I mixed it, what type of effects I put in, and how I arranged it. So let's go. So Cubeatz is actually a producer duo from Germany, and they pretty much made the sample for every single song since 2015, and they're known for their dark and catchy melodies. This is not me trying to replicate it. I was just making a melody, and this is what I came up with, and I thought it was a great fit for a Cubeatz type beat. Let me show you what I did, but first let's listen to the melody itself. So we're working with 125 BPM and A sharp minor scale or B flat. And if you're gonna make melodies like this, I highly suggest you to use a minor scale, and A sharp is actually, for me, is the one that sounds the darkest, so I chose that one. But experiment with it, see what you can do, what you can come up with. So let's go through the music theory behind it first. There are only two chords in this main melody. The first one is an A sharp minor triad, and the second one is an F minor triad. So how you get a triad is pretty simple. You're gonna take the first note of the scale, which in this case is an A sharp. I could have taken the higher octave as well, but I thought the lower octave sounded better. And then you're gonna go to the third note of a scale, which in this case is a C sharp, and then the fifth note, which is an F. So after getting this, you're gonna duplicate it and go 5 notes down, and you get this chord. I don't recommend you to do this for every single melody, because then it'll sound all the same, and you don't want that. And on top of these chords, I made a catchy melody and I looped it for 8 bars straight, and at the end I added an alternative ending, so we knew that it was the end of the loop. And I also did a second part of the same guitar. The only difference between the first part and the second part is some higher octave accent notes, like this A sharp here, or this C here. The reason why I did 2 different parts is because I didn't want the first part looping over and over and over again, because otherwise it would be too boring. So I made another part, and I made sure that this one is a little bit different, not too complicated, still kept it real simple. I added some accent notes like A sharp and all these other notes, and the guitar itself sounds like this. One of my tips for melodies like this is to have an alternative ending, but make sure it's ending on a low note rather than a high note, because that way the listener will understand that this is the end of the loop, and when the second loop starts, you're gonna hit them with the accent points that you didn't have before. But it'll be different, but you're gonna keep the same energy going. As far as sound selection is concerned, I made sure to pick a guitar that sounds really dull and dry, and I added some effects on top of it to make it sound a little bit more full and roomy, but I didn't make it sound bright because we don't want that. We need a dark guitar For the flute, I went with a really simple melody. As you can see, I only used 2 notes. For the second part, I took these notes and made them longer. It adds a little bit of variation to the loop itself. Let's give it a listen. Honestly, there's not much music theory going on behind this melody itself. They're just some accent notes to give a little bit of a flavor, because the guitar itself sounded really dry, but with the flute, I think it complemented it real good. As far as sound selection is concerned, I made sure to pick a flute that sounds really dark and roomy, unlike the guitar I picked, which was real dry, and I kept it really simple. One thing about Cubeatz is that their sound selection is so good, they just keep it really simple. That's what you gotta do as well. Make sure that your sound selection is good and keep it simple. If you're gonna use vocal chops for melodies like this, make sure that you're filling in the space with vocal chops rather than making it fight for the other instruments' frequencies. As you can see here, when the flute is not playing, the vocal chop is playing, and vice versa. So they're kind of giving each other a call and response action. And that's one of the other factors you need to be considerate of. The call and response is really important, and that's what makes your loops sound catchy. To explain it in a better perspective, as you can see, what I did here with the C sharp and the C is to call for a response. So this is the call, and the second part is a response. This is one of the key elements to making beats like this. Make sure that your melodies have 2 different parts, but they go well together and they correlate to each other and make up a whole nother melody. That's what you gotta be taking care of. Make sure that your melodies are calling and responding to each other. Let's go through some of the effects I have. The guitar, I don't have too many things other than this plugin called Valhalla Supermassive. It's free and it's one of the best free reverb plugins out there. I used this preset and brought the mix down as much as I could. Another thing I added was this EQ. You can use a stock one, it's completely fine. And I took out some of the low ends just to get rid of the muddiness. For the flute, I again used a reverb. This time I went with the stock reverb and made sure the separation knob was all the way up so it sounds as roomy as possible. And again, I took some of the lows. So I'm gonna make you listen to the vocal chops without any effects on them, and then we're gonna listen to it with the effects to see how they're different. As you can hear, they were really dry sounding, so I did my best to make sure that they sound as wet as possible, and I did that with adding Valhalla Supermassive again. This time I used this preset and made the mix go up a little bit more. And I used Effect Rack with this preset called Cool Points. This preset distorts and gives it more reverb, so it sounds more full. I have 2 dynamic EQs going. One of the choir preset from FabFilter Pro 3, and the other one is a vocal lead, but I took down some of the lows because I didn't want muddiness on the low end. So now I'm going to show you what I did with the loop and how I turned it into a beat. For the beat, I used a rim shot rather than a snare or a clap because I think it complements the loop a little bit better. I made a crazy hi-hat pattern. I actually took a MIDI and then changed a lot of things to my own liking. This is what I came up with. I made sure to use the hi-hat on different notes so it adds more depth to it. The open hat is pretty simple, hits on every 2 bars and B4. The kick follows the 808, but it has a stutter here, which I'm going to be explaining. And I have a percussion sound that sounds like this. 808 is probably the most important thing on beats like this. It sounds like this. So let's give it a listen. So for the 808, you need to leave a lot of space because if you just keep the 808s too busy, then you will not have enough space for other elements. like this kick here. As you can see, when the 808 starts playing, I have this 4-count kick, and it goes, which pretty much fills the space and gives it the beat more bounce. As far as the mixing is concerned, I made sure your 808 is hearable, but it's not clipping. I mean, it's clipping, but it's not going over 0 decibels. In the rim shot, and I took some of the low end and the high end from the melody. But when you're doing this, make sure you're not taking a lot, because we want to hear all the elements in the melody. If you're taking too much, so something like this would have sounded horrible. And the high end, I'm not really taking anything. I'm just leaving room for the hi-hat and the open hat, because this is where the hi-hat and the open hat sits. This is pretty much it for the beat. Let me know what type of beat you want me to make next. Let me know how I can improve these videos. Like, comment, all that to help me out. Thank you. Have a good one.